Hi, I'm Adam Beckett. I'm a member of the Supporters Trust Board. I'm visiting from America right now, and this is my United. First game I attended was actually Chelsea away back in, I think, 1995 or 96. I was in the home supporters with my uncle, who was a Chelsea fan, and Newcastle equalised in injury time, and I remember having to try not to celebrate the goal even though I was absolutely over the moon. Les Ferdinand scored, so that was my first Newcastle game. There's so many to choose from. I think the natural choice is Alan Shearer's volley against Everton, Alan Shearer's volley against Aston Villa, Alan Shearer's goal when he turned Marcel Desailly against Chelsea. But actually, I think my favourite is a bit of a classic. It's the fifth goal against Man United. It's the Philippe Albert chip. It's just such a memorable day for all Newcastle fans, such a memorable goal. Just probably one of my favourite events as a fan over the last 25 years or so. I think my favourite player growing up, I think it was Alan Shearer, but actually there are so many other choices, particularly from the mid-90s to the mid-2000s when I was kind of a teenager. I loved Kieran Dyer, absolutely adored Kieran Dyer when he played for Newcastle, but also, Craig Bellamy, Gary Speed, Warren Barton. We had so many great players back then, David Ginola, of course, but I think Alan Shearer is still my favourite player. I think, again, I'd probably go to that Man U game. Was my favourite game as a Newcastle fan. That 5-0 game was so memorable for all of us. So as many great games as we've had, I think the Man U game, the 5-0 win at St James's, was my favourite game. My favourite Newcastle kit, again, it's a bit of an easy way out, but it is that 95-96 Newcastle brown ale shirt with the grandad collar. I know they've tried to bring that back a couple times, including this season's kit has that collar. But I don't think they'll ever be able to replicate that. That home kit was such a classic, and of course it came with such incredible memories for all Newcastle fans. I was only 10 or 11 at the time, but I remember my parents buying me that kit and having Ferdinand 9 on the back during that 95-96 season. So that's probably my favourite home shirt. We've had some funny away shirts, but I think, again, my favourite away shirt is probably that same season, the purple and blue stripes or hoops. I think those are my favourite two kits. Favourite Newcastle manager, this is another really difficult one because we've had a couple of really great managers, not so much recently. So I'm really torn between Kevin Keegan and Sir Bobby Robson. The Keegan era was just so wonderful for all Newcastle fans, but I was a bit young to really understand what a manager did then. I was only 10 or 11, so I think probably Bobby Robson just steals it for me as my favourite manager. So many reasons, really. I mean, Bobby, was obviously so well known in the area, but also so well known across Europe, and obviously as the England manager as well. I think he just stood for so many wonderful things that the club wanted to be. It's almost sort of a cultural appointment. He stood for so many great things about the North East, but also about England. But I think also just as a player, I would have really loved sort of that level of man management, that sort of fatherly figure. Obviously, Keegan had some other amazing qualities as well, created an attacking style of play that hasn't really been replicated, certainly by Newcastle. But I think Bobby, just because he's such a nice man, I think it's just an easy way out, but he was such a nice man and such a great man manager. If you read any comments made by the players that were managed by him, they'll tell you that there was no better personality to have in the changing room, no better man manager. I recently read Kieran Dyer's autobiography, and he talked about that. He talked about playing under Hullett and other England managers, of course, but he just said that Bobby was the absolute best man manager, not best tactician, obviously, but just the best person to be his manager. So I think Bobby is my choice. Yeah, player that broke my heart, or sort of the one that got away, it's a difficult one because we've had so many great players that have really built wonderful careers at Newcastle. But I specifically remember when Andy Cole left, of course, just the sort of horror and surprise that Newcastle would sell such a tremendous player to their arch rival or their biggest rival at the time. And just this feeling, even at like 9 or 10 or however old I was, just this feeling of sort of like, where do they go from here? How can they sell their best player? What are they going to do to replace him? Of course, Keegan had a plan, right? It was to sign Ferdinand and then ultimately to sign Alan Shearer. So it was all part of a master plan. But at the time, it was just incredible to think that we would sell someone that good on a team that was becoming a real championship contender. And then the other one that stands out to me, maybe a bit sort of unknown, is Johnny Woodgate, selling Jonathan Woodgate. I think partly because in hindsight it was sort of the beginning of the end of the Robson era, even if they didn't know it at the time. I think the club almost did it without Robson really knowing that it was going to happen. But again, he was just he was an England international. He was a tremendous defender in an era when we didn't really have any tremendous defenders. So I just, that sort of stands out to me as a moment where I really didn't quite know what the club was doing, a bit like the Cole sale at the time, just a bit of bewilderment. So those are two players that I feel like sort of got away from the club in the end. Yeah, there are lots of moments over the years, particularly in the last 14 or 15 years, of course. I think the first relegation under Ashley, I remember I was in America, obviously, at the time, watching it on TV, and even if it felt like it may have been coming for the whole season, the actual realization that it had happened, I remember being completely heartbroken, crying into my pint at the time, just thinking about Newcastle being a championship club and not being in the Premier League really broke my heart, and actually the fear of what it meant for the future of the club. Now, as it turns out, they bounced right back, but all of my dread was that we were not going to bounce right back and we were going to do what other clubs have done and go, further down the leagues. And then a couple of the FA Cup finals, even though we were always sort of underdogs going into those cup finals, or at least maybe it felt like it as fans. You'd think just by the law of averages that we would have won one of those cup finals, seeing as we were in 2 or 3 of them. And then actually one, now that I'm thinking about it, one that stands out was the Charity Shield loss right after we had signed Shearer, right after we'd given up, the big lead going into the end of the previous season. It just felt like if we were ever going to beat Man U for anything, that might have been sort of our one shot to do it, even though it's not a trophy that really means anything particularly anymore. But given the fact that we had just signed Shearer, it felt like we'd made the move to become the biggest club in the country, and we just got blown away. I think we lost 3-0 or something in that Charity Shield. That was a really, really hard moment as a kid. Yeah, a moment I'll never forget as a fan. There have been so many. I think the one, if I closed my eyes and thought of a moment, it would be the signing of Shearer. It would be the presentation, the big outside sort of ceremony that they did for the signing of Shearer, seeing all of those fans. Of course, I grew up down south, so I'm not a local, so I wasn't there or anything, but I remember seeing it on the news and seeing it in the newspapers with him holding the shirt up, wearing the shirt for the first time, turning around and showing the number 9 in front of that big stand was really memorable. And then his press conference that was out in, I think in Asia somewhere, he joined up with the squad out in Asia. That's a very, very memorable time to be a Newcastle fan. And then funnily enough, I was thinking about this on the way over here, another really memorable moment I have is the Lee Bowyer Kieran Dyer fight. I just remember that so clearly. I remember watching the video of it, just being sort of, amazed that would happen on a football pitch. I'd never seen two players from the same team get in a fight on the pitch. And Souness was manager, with a horrible time for the club, and Stephen Taylor had already been sent off in that game. So he went from 11 to 10 down to 8. So just a funny, memorable moment, but that was one that really stands out to me. Yeah, favourite current player is probably Callum Wilson. I've always loved Newcastle number 9s. I played number 9 when I played football, and obviously Cole and Ferdinand and Shearer, great number 9s. We've not had too many great number 9s recently. Andy Carroll represented the club pretty well as a number 9 for a while. Obafemi Martins was a number 9 for a while, but it's felt like we've needed a proper number 9 striker. So I think Callum Wilson is probably my favourite player. One or two other favourites as well. I really like Jamal Lewis. I really hope he becomes the left back that we thought we were signing. Martin Dubravka is obviously fantastic as well. But yeah, I think Callum Wilson is my favourite current player. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Adam Beckett, visiting from America, and this is My United.